Welcome, Profit Boss. Today I have with me a very special guy. First of all, he is my launch coach, is how we met. It was very fortuitous, serendipitous, but Ron Reich is a sought after marketing strategist and consultant. He is a former attorney. Ron has been selling online for over 14 years, we discovered today. After launching over 50 of his own products in a variety of niches, he later became the quote unquote secret weapon behind many of the biggest names in the industry, including Hay House Publishing, Todd Herman, Selena Soo, Denise Duffield-Thomas, and Ryan Levesque. His current focus is helping emerging experts build seven-figure businesses through his proprietary marketing systems. Ron, welcome to Profit Boss Radio.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah. So Ron, you're kind of a successful business whisperer. You're full of not just good information, but like well-timed good information. So give us a sense of, I just kind of dropped a bunch of names, right? Those are big industry names that people you've worked with, but give us a sense of how did you give us a sense of your career trajectory? How did you get into it? And what gives you first of all, let's just start. What's the name of the puppy on the couch behind you?
This is Milo. Yeah, he's everybody's got bookshelves in the backgrounds. I have Batman, the Buddha, and my dogs. So.
And the Zen dog. Okay, got it.
Exactly. He's chilling out.
He keeps you grounded.
Exactly. Very grounded.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right, good. So tell us how you come to have such perspective on not just launching, but money and all things entrepreneur.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for asking that. And so I'll tell you about when I first got into online marketing, but actually before that, I think it'd be instructive to you listening to this, just about kind of where I came from and how I got to where I am. And actually my story actually started out when I was in the second grade, was actually I had my first motivational talk from my mother when I came home from school one day. And she told me that I was going to have to be held back, that I was going to have to repeat the second grade. And as you can imagine, this was like super duper traumatic for me. I was crying for weeks. I felt like it. And from that point on, I was 5 years old at the time. And really honestly speaking, the next like 30 years of my life, I always felt like something was wrong with me. Like I wasn't smart enough, like I couldn't do things the right way. And so because of that, I always had this chip on my shoulder where I felt like I had to overcompensate, like, oh, I'm not an idiot. I am smart. So that's why I ended up becoming a high achiever in academics. I ended up going to law school, ended up passing the bar exam. And then one thing led to another. I got involved in online marketing. But I always was kind of like this behind the scenes type of person. So this is actually to your point, how did I get this perspective? So after I quit my lawyer job, I ended up launching my own businesses, selling my own products, primarily in the dog training space, believe it or not, selling, I love dogs, I'm walking my talk, as well as in the relationship space. And I was always a behind the scenes type person. So as a result of that, and I ended up, those businesses generated, millions of dollars. But I was always like kind of the puppet master behind the scenes, like you mentioned. And then I ended up graduating to Ryan Levesque, who you mentioned. He was my mentor at the time. And when his business was really growing, this was around 2015, he needed help in his business. First, he launched a mastermind. He needed someone to coach his mastermind members. And then he also needed someone to help him with marketing. So before I knew it, I was actually his full-time marketing director. And I ended up doing that for 2 years. And that's what really got me involved in helping entrepreneurs grow their businesses. And then from that point on, I ended up working with him for 2 years. I ended up then consulting with mostly high-level, like multi-seven-figure players on their launches. And then I also, later on, I found out that the people who I could really serve the best are emerging entrepreneurs who are typically doing lower six figures, and then I help them move to seven figures. So to your point, it's like, I really am very proud of the fact that I really have a unique perspective on what it really takes to build a seven-figure business, because I've built my own successful businesses. I've worked behind the scenes of people like Ryan Levesque and Todd Herman and Denise Duffield-Thomas, like you mentioned. And then I've also coached people who are at those early stages and who are maybe only doing a couple $100,000 a year, and help them actually grow to seven figures. And that's probably the thing I'm most proud of is my seven-figure case studies, the people that actually, went from, a couple $100,000 a year to seven figures and beyond. So yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I do have a very unique perspective. Absolutely. And one, just to kind of wrap a bow around this story, is that I always felt like, because of what happened when I was younger, that because I kind of felt like there was something wrong with me, that's why for a while, I was really afraid to step out, beyond the shadows, so to speak. And that's why I always was that behind the scenes person. But I really felt like the reason why I'm talking to you right now, that's why I'm excited to be on your podcast, so I can actually be front facing and actually bring my message to more people, because I think that that's going to have a bigger impact, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. You and I have something similar, actually, slightly different. I had a lot of self-loathing, I think is the right term, but I learned that
Right.
I could stand out by doing well in academics, because I can take tests well. And so it
For
made me
sure.
really good at school. It wasn't fulfilling. I was never fulfilled, but when you
Totally.
talk
Yeah.
about that chip on your shoulder, it's like, I had to
Yeah,
be good at
absolutely.
school. Yeah. So
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's interesting because, like, as we know now, right? Like, academics, like being good at school, that is a very specific skill set that really anyone can learn if they're
right.
motivated enough, for
Right.
sure.
Exactly. Okay. So let's talk about, you have this large sample size of seeing the inner workings of how entrepreneurs work. And I bet you can start to identify, I talk a lot about on this show about the money operating system, but
Hmm.
your vantage point is like, how do entrepreneurs take coaching? How in action are they? What is the fuel? What's going on in the background when someone's consistently taking successful action versus not successful action?
Hmm.
Tell us how you've organized your thoughts around that.
Yeah, for sure. So as you're alluding to, it really, of course, I mean, if you're listening to this, you have heard this before, that really the difference between someone who does seven figures and someone who gets to maybe just $100,000 a year or a couple $100,000 a year and stays there. Really, the big difference really is, it really is in the mindset. It's the mindset plus the actions that they're taking, but it really is more the mindset. Because the truth of the matter is, like, we know the statistics that, I don't know the exact statistics off the top of my head, maybe you know, but like, if you're doing $100,000 or $200,000 a year in revenue, you're in like the top 5% of
Right.
businesses. Like, that's like, it's kind of not a joke. And the point I'm getting at is that if you're listening to this and you're doing $100,000 a year or $200,000 a year, pat yourself on the back, because you're in that top percentile. And most likely you're working hard, like you're taking action. So really the difference is from like those people who are not getting to that seven figures and the people who kind of stay on that hamster wheel. It really does come down to the mindset, which I'm excited about diving into, kind of like what those things are with you right now, if you'll let me.
Right. Yeah, that would be awesome. So you have your traits of a seven-figure mindset. So share with us what those are.
Yeah. So a couple of things we have are, I have like essentially these five pillars of the seven-figure mindset. And before I get into those, which are really awesome, if you're listening to this, please take notes and act on what I'm talking about, because it's going to be game changing for you. And the other thing, before I get into this, I do want to just talk about some of the things that will allow someone, kind of the fuel, like you mentioned, of building that seven-figure mindset. These are like the building blocks of a seven-figure mindset. Then I'll get into the pillars. So one of the things is that if you want to build a seven-figure business, you need to believe it's possible. This is a huge thing that most people who don't build people who don't build seven-figure businesses, they just don't, on that really visceral level, believe it's possible.
Yeah.
They also need to believe they're capable of doing it. Like, they need to believe it's possible and that they're capable and that they have the skills to do it. The good news there is that the technical skills of building a seven-figure business, they're not really super complicated. If you built a six-figure business or a multiple six-figure business, I promise you have the skills, or you can learn the skills. And then the third thing that you have to have in place is you have to have motivation. This is a thing that you heard me mention this before, Hillary, is that in a lot of ways, building a seven-figure business is kind of an irrational thing for a lot of people. If you do the things that you, Hillary, talk about and keep your expenses in a good situation and have a good profit, you could have an awesome life if you're doing like $400,000 or $500,000 a year.
Absolutely.
So, right. Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about. You're kind of like, you're winning, like if you're doing that. So from going from $400,000 a year, let's say, to 7 figures, you need to have it's kind of irrational. You need to really, really want it. And, not everybody has that motivation. And this is where giving some tough love here. Some people who are at that, they might be at that, $100,000, 200, 300, even $400,000 or $500,000 a year level. And they're wondering, how come I'm not hitting 7 figures? The truth of the matter is that probably they don't want it bad enough. Like their actions are demonstrating that they're not really, going that extra mile, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm going to keep moving on here. So again, so you have to believe it's possible. You have to be motivated, and you have to have the capability, which you do have that capability. So let's get into the actual 5 pillars. I'm so excited about talking about this. This is one of my favorite topics on earth. Okay, so pillar number 1 is that I alluded to this in the past, or in a couple seconds ago. 7-figure players, they do what is necessary, and they are 100% all in committed. And this is just one of those things where, and I see this all the time with my most successful clients, is that they do not, when they know what they need to do, they do not negotiate with their coach or with reality or whatnot.
I love that phrase. The less you negotiate with reality, the better you're going to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. They just do not negotiate with reality. Where, sometimes to be honest, and we've talked about this, sometimes the things that a person needs to do to get to that next level, it's going to involve risk. It's going to involve really stepping outside your comfort zone. And the 7-figure players, they're willing to move forward in spite of that uncomfort. I mean, this is one of the keys. So for example, like one kind of hack, let's say, of hitting your and this is actually, you're like the best. Like, I love it. I learned it from you. The whole, like, a great example is is it the 50 no challenge, the 100 no challenge? What number do you use?
Yeah, we call it the no challenge. I invite people to go out and ask for enough things that they're going to get no 100 times. And I say you're going to get yes so many times on the way to 100 no's that you'll totally change your life.
Absolutely. For example, so here's one thing. So a couple things that, so when I at my seminars, and I've had conversations like this, when I ask 7-figure people, what's the number one thing that allowed you to get to 7 figures in the way that you did? The number one thing they say, I was focused. I stayed focused on what was important. And that's related to doing what's necessary. And then the second thing that they'll say, and this is critical, and it ties in perfectly with what we're talking about right here, is the second thing that comes up most often is they say, I got over my fear of asking for help. I realized I couldn't do it alone. And so, and this doesn't just mean building a team, which once you're kind of doing like, $400,000 or $500,000 a year, that it might make sense to start really getting into that. But it really is just like asking for whatever you need to ask for, asking to get on more podcasts, asking for the sale more often. If you want to launch bigger, asking for more speaking opportunities. It could be asking people to, what's the other, like asking people to be your affiliates, for example. Right. Just the more you ask, again, if this is a perfect thing. If I give that 100 no challenge to someone, the 7-figure player is going to be like, okay, bam, that's the challenge. I'm gonna get my 100 no's faster than everybody else. Ron, I'm gonna be your best student. I'm going to get 100 no's within the next week. That's the 7-figure mindset. Where like other people who are not 7-figure players, they'll be like, oh, I don't know, like, yeah, like that sounds good, but could I just do that? So that is an example. So again, big picture, 7-figure A players, they do what is necessary.
Because it's like, if you just keep taking the same actions, obviously you're going to produce the same results in life. So if you want bigger, better, more profitable results, you have to do something brand new.
Absolutely. And you have to get out of your comfort zone. Exactly. This is just, and this never ends. Even, if you want to go from like 7 figures to multiple 7 figures, if you want to go to 10 million, you're always getting outside of your comfort zone. There's never a point where you're there. And and people who are, and it doesn't get easier. This is newsflash. It's no easier to to run a 7-figure business than a 6-figure business. And then some people will say it's actually, not even worth it to run a $10 million business because of all the extra complications that you have. Now, again, I think that's a great goal if people want to do that, but just realize that there's never a point where you're just hanging out on the beach, drinking pina coladas. And
not unless you're paying someone else to do all the things you're actually responsible for.
For sure. Totally.
I learned this lesson around weightlifting. Actually, a coach finally said, look, it never starts to hurt less. You just put more weights on the bar, right?
Exactly. It's such a simple metaphor. I'm going to use that one as well. Yeah, that one is, that's absolutely true. So yeah, moving on here, just so in the interest of time, as you can tell, I could talk about all of these for hours, especially when you get the two of us chatting. Okay, so second thing. So first thing is A players, 7-figure players, they do what is necessary. The second thing is the extra 3%. 7-figure players, they go the extra mile with everything. There's a lot of, if you study athletes and like the highest level athletes and things like that, what you'll find is that the people who get first place, the people who win gold medals, they're not like way better than the guy that gets 10th place, for example. They're literally percentiles better. It's like, and if you look at like sprinters, it's literally like percentages of percentages. The point I'm getting at is that it's not so much about being so much better or so much smarter. It's about just being consistently going the extra mile not in everything generally, but also specifically with the things that we're talking about here. So for example, using this example, the 7-figure or the emerging 7-figure player that hears the 100 no challenge, they'll be like, well, I'm going to get 200 no's. Like I'm going to totally smash this. And it's about going the extra mile with their competition, with like their customers, for example. It's about really just going farther with everything. Because again, it takes a certain person to be a 7-figure player. You're by definition in the top 1% of entrepreneurs. So in order to get there, you have to go that extra mile.
I think it's also about being ruthless about not doing what doesn't matter. So you have to go to 103% on the things that do matter, but then
absolutely,
because you can't burn yourself out. It's like if sending that printed newsletter. I mean, this is one thing I was doing. I was printing these newsletters and mailing them out. And that was for some coach in my industry told me to do that. I finally said, this is nuts. I can't spend my resources on this anymore.
For
right.
Sure.
It's just, it's not producing a result.
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Kind of, related to number one, doing what's necessary. It's like, once you know what's necessary, once you know what really moves the needle, it's about being relentlessly focused on those things. And so this is where, not to get too much into business strategy, but if you're, again, here, another super tip. If you're doing a couple $100,000 a year, what you're going to find, this is the 80-20 rule, which most likely you've heard about, that a certain percentage, most likely 80% of your income is coming just from a certain couple of activities. And 80% of your best leads are coming from a few certain places. So it's really about focusing relentlessly on what are those levers. There's this idea of addition by subtraction, which most people, our natural inclination, we think that we can make things better. They've done scientific studies about this. We think we can make things better by adding more stuff to it. But the truth of the matter is oftentimes it is subtracting, exactly what you said, which is going to give us those exponential results.
Right.
Cool. Moving on here. All right. So one of my absolute favorite topics in the world, pillar number 3 is what we call the anti-fragile mindset. And have you heard about this concept of anti-fragility before, Hillary?
I have heard about the concept, and I've loved listening to you describe it. There's something specific that you said that just really had my brain going, but I'll let you talk it through, and then I'll ask you
Okay,
about
cool.
one
Good
aspect
stuff.
of it.
Cool. So this idea of being anti-fragile, it comes from this guy, Nassim Taleb, I believe is how you say his last name. He wrote a book called Anti-Fragile. And really the idea, it's really best explained with a metaphor that he uses in the book. So imagine there's a vase with and there's a box with a vase inside of it. And on the outside of the box, it says fragile. So what happens when you shake that box? Of course, when you shake that box, it breaks. And we have another box with another vase in it. On the outside of this box, it says resilient. So what does that mean? It means that if you shake it, it's resilient, it's strong, so it doesn't break, which is awesome. And then there's a third box with a vase in it. This one says anti-fragile on the back or on the front. And this one, when you shake it, it actually gets stronger. This is really what it means to be anti-fragile. The idea is that the seven-figure player is totally anti-fragile. They use obstacles and challenges and things that are difficult to make them stronger and get them to the next level. This is, you mentioned weightlifting, right?
Yes.
The growth the pain of weightlifting directly relates to the growth. So this is realizing that and the thing is, in business, bad things do happen. Launches will fail. You will have people steal from you. But if you're an anti-fragile entrepreneur, you really need to get in. You need to really not dwell on those things, but realize that they're gifts and they are going to make you stronger. There's a great this is a little more in the context of personal development, but it's a great equation that I came up with, which is basically this. So if you're listening to this, you're into growing your business, you're into growing it as a person. So here's the equation. And Hillary, you're good at math. I'm aware of this. Like you're right.
I'm at least a B+ player there.
Yeah, you're. So here's the equation. Growth equals awesome. Growth is awesome. We agree on that. Anyone listening, if you're listening to this, you agree on this. Challenges, obstacles, etc., equal growth. Mm-hmm. Therefore,
by the transitive property.
Exactly, right where I'm going. Therefore, challenges, obstacles, etc., equal awesome. So this is what we need to realize. And that when something bad happens, we need to realize that it's awesome. And then again, seven-figure players, if bad things happen, they do not dwell on them. They think, okay, what do I need to do now? How can I learn from this? How can I recover? And again, they realize that this is just part of the game.
Right on. So what would you say if someone's like, Ron, I'm just really going through a tough time right now. Like all I see are costs, all I see are impacts, all I see are distractions from my business. Do you have any insight on how to get to be that anti-fragile mindset? Is it just really taking on that this pain point is now my source of strength?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of it really is, it's just deciding to have the mindset. There are tools you can use, for example, to get yourself like technically in the moment to get yourself into a better state. One of the great ones is you can watch this video by the super awesome Navy SEAL dude, Jocko Willink. I think that's how you pronounce his name. The video, just Google Jocko Good. And it's this really awesome video where the whole thing, basically the idea is that his process is anything bad happens, good. And then of course, once you get into the process of, oh, it's good, your mind's going to start to explain like why it's good. Oh, okay, good. My costs are out of control. Oh, good. This gives me an opportunity to actually look at those costs and realize what I need to fix to become a more responsible entrepreneur. Or good. This is a good opportunity for me to hire Hillary so she can show me how to get my costs under control, for example. Whatever it is. But again, the point I'm getting at is that think about exercising your anti-fragile muscles. That's really what we're talking about here. It's like the more you get in the habit of just, believing that you're anti-fragile and realizing that, it's always going to be a challenge, and kind of just rewiring your brain to move forward when you feel that difficulty, the better off it's going to be. I'm trying to think if there's any other quick tools that I can give you. That's a good easy one that people can start with.
All right, perfect. What's next? What's next on your list?
Next on my list is, okay, so pillar number 4 is that A players, 7-figure players, they're process focused and they control the things that are controllable. So this is where there's this idea of leading indicators versus lag indicators. I'm guessing you're familiar with this concept?
Yes, actually, in my coaching program, I've realized I called leading indicators key performance indicators. So that's just for those of you who have been in my programs, that's Ron and I are talking about the same thing, just using different words.
Okay, great. Yeah. So a key performance indicator or a leading indicator, what this is the thing that you as the entrepreneur have 100% control over. So these are things like how many sales calls you make, how many people you ask things for, or how much content you post, how many podcasts you put out. It's a thing that you have 100% control over. It can also be related to a project. For example, did I execute my launch? Did I build this funnel? Did I perform this webinar? So that's the leading indicator. And then what we call lag indicators that is the result. That is the thing that usually has some kind of a number tied to it. So for example, if it might be something along those lines, that a great example would be, okay, if I want to sign up one new client, and I know that in order to sign up one new client, I need to generate 3 sales calls I need to generate 3 sales calls. And then, okay, so what I need to do to generate 3 sales calls, that's my dog barking. This is a great anti-fragile moment, a time for me to be calm and, and focused on this podcast. So if I need to generate 3 sales calls, I might, for example, I might think, okay, what I need to do to generate 3 sales calls? Okay, I need to reach out to 30 people because I know for every 10 people I reach out to, I get 1 sales call. Okay, so my leading indicator is going to be how many people did I reach out to? This is the thing that I have 100% control over. And the idea is that if I do X thing, then the result of getting that 1 client is going to happen. And here's the thing: oftentimes, especially if you're selling like a higher end offer, no joke, getting to $1 million, it's the ultimate simple but not easy. Oftentimes, it really is just realizing, okay, if I'm selling a $5,000-$10,000 product, how many then do I need to sell per month? Okay, how many sales calls do I need to generate? Okay, right. How many people do I need to talk to? And then getting to work. The big picture, it's about focusing on what you have control over, and good things are going to happen.
It's like, in some cases, it's simple math, right? Because the thing you're doing that's producing contact or trust or eventually the sale is those reach outs, that asking for the order, asking for what you want.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's one thing I've really learned from you is like taking out the complexity of these virtual internet-based funnels that everyone wants to talk about, So anyway, I interrupted you.
No, all good. It's one of my favorite. It's really interesting for me, just to be totally honest, is that, so I pride myself on being like, I started as a high-end launch strategist. I spent a couple of years working with Ryan Levesque. I was his #1 student, doing all sorts, and he has amazing stuff with his quiz funnels, for example. Basically, I spent the first 10 years of my career doing all sorts of high-level marketing stuff and with complicated funnels and upsells and downsells and $1 million and multi-million-dollar launches with all these different sequences and things like that. And that stuff is awesome. And I still, even my, for my emerging entrepreneurs who are scaling to 7 figures, totally doing launches and webinars and email sequences, I support them with that. And that stuff does have their place. However, the truth of the matter is that if I'm being honest, the stuff that really moves the needle the fastest, it's typically the more kind of quote unquote old school marketing, basically picking up the phone. There you go. Pick up the phone more, ask for more stuff. And you don't need complicated funnels. Talk to people. Exactly. And it's I have many favorite topics. Another one of my favorite topics is realizing that, relationships and talking to people this just is just how it works. And if you look at, again, at the highest levels of business and politics and things like that, this is the game. So a great example is, it's political season now. It feels like it's been political season for a long time. I'm not going to get into politics, but what I will say is that if you look at a person who's running for office, anyone who's running for office, to have the most responsible job in the world, or a responsible job, let's say, what are they actually spending their time on? They're spending their time, basically a big portion of their time, talking to people. Like, for example, fundraising is a big part of actually, they're spending time fundraising, picking up the phone, asking for money. They're going out to events, wining and dining people. They're going out and speaking at events. Again, this is what they're focusing on. If you look at like high level CEOs, why are they traveling on private jets? Because they need to like fly to places to meet people so they can make business happen, for example. So again, this is just how it works, again, at any level. So if it's, if it's good enough for Jeff Bezos, then it's good enough for you to pick up the phone and talk to people. You know what I'm saying?
I do. You never get to a place where you're such a successful CEO that you can stop talking to people. You just have to keep raising the bar.
Absolutely. Who you're talking to. Yeah, of course. Yeah, you got to be to be worthy to talk to Jeff Bezos, obviously you have to be a big deal, for sure.
All right. So that fourth point is be relentlessly process focused on focus on controlling the things that you can control. Anything else to say about that one? Oh, I know. I like you make the point. You love it when people are super implementers. So you love it when people take action right away, right? And this actually carries through all of your
absolute
pillars.
Yeah. One of the things that I mentioned that I didn't mention, but I will mention now, is that the 7-figure players, the number one thing that they have in common, the number one thing is, and this again carries through with everything we're talking about, is they implement like machines. They implement like robots. My best 7-figure players, they really astonish me with how amazing they implement. It's like I'll give them some stuff to do, and I might think that they're gonna like, well, we're gonna talk next week, and it's like 3 days later, hey, did this. It's like, wow. And that really is what it takes, where most people don't implement that fast. So like I said, they implement like machines, they implement like robots. And again, this is the number one thing they all have in common. It's like the master skill. We talk about capabilities and skills. The master skill is the ability to execute.
Yeah. All right, perfect. And what's the fifth pillar then?
All right. So the fifth pillar is that energy is power. And really what we're talking about here is that you might have heard of this idea that your physiology controls your psychology. And so one kind of hack to get to that next level is really to focus on your energy and making sure that you have maximum energy. So, and there's a lot that goes into this. I have complete trainings on the topic, but let me just kind of give you a few things to consider. There's this idea that they've done studies on high-level business people, Olympic athletes, chess players, high-level musicians, and what they found is that we can really only do about 4 to 5 hours of focused actual work per day. The average is 4.5 hours. But what you're going to find is that the highest level players, the highest achievers, the top 1%, the 7-figure players and the gold, the Olympians, et cetera, what they do is they spend the rest of they use the rest of the day, the other 19.5 hours, to really maximize their energy, to make sure that they can really maximize their 4.5 hours. Does that make sense?
Yep. So proper sleep, proper nutrition. I know you talk a lot about meditation. Anything else you like?
Yes, all those things. Yeah, essentially the big ones are, as you mentioned, eating, sleeping, exercising, meditating, And a big one is unplugging. That's spending less time on your smartphone and being reactive and checking the email and things like that. I have a rule. I never check email before. Two rules that I use that I would encourage others to consider. Never check email before noon, and keep your smartphone off 99% of the time. Another way of saying only use your smartphone unless it's absolutely necessary. I have more to say about this topic, but I know we're kind of running against the clock here. But really, if you do that, this is kind of another hack in the sense that if you really, really decide to prioritize your energy, not only are you going to perform better, and you're going to it's going to be easier to implement and take action and do all the things we've been talking about for most of this call, you're also just going to feel really, really good. And it's almost like this makes it a lot easier to be anti-fragile. It's another kind of anti-fragile hack. Like if you're feeling really good, if you're eating good, if you're meditating, if your vibe is strong to get a little woo, it's all good. Like it doesn't matter if your launch doesn't do good. You're not going to get too wound up about it.
One thing I learned one time, I did a leadership training program, and they wanted us to internalize the lesson that I think Brendan Burchard says that power plant doesn't get energy, it creates energy. And so they had us, just generate energy from nothing. And what I learned is that kind of thing is self-sustaining. So
absolutely.
Once you come up with the activation energy that it takes to get your body and yourself in a high vibe, it tends to stay that
absolutely,
way. It's a really cool thing to learn for yourself.
Absolutely. And yeah, we'll get a little on the woo side is that, there is this idea that there's energy that is kind of, people might call it like your soul force or your life force, where literally there is an energy out there that it really is infinite. And I would argue that's why that's happening for sure.
Yeah. Ron, thanks for joining us. If you're listening, you really need to take Ron's advice to heart. He literally has seen the inner workings of hundreds, if not thousands of entrepreneurs' businesses. And, he really does know the symptoms of success. And so this synopsis is really just something for you to take and run with. Ron, where can people connect with you that matters? First of all, your newsletter is fantastic. I love seeing your posts on Facebook. Where do you want to send people if they want to connect with you after today?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, the best place to get in touch with me would probably actually be my free Facebook group. I have a Facebook group called Heroic Profits for Mission-Driven Entrepreneurs. So if you just type in Heroic Profits on Facebook, you should be able to find it. And also just connect with me directly on Facebook on my personal page. I post a lot of stuff there, just Ron Reich. And add me and send me a message, and we'll love to connect.
Awesome. All right, Ron, thanks for your contribution. It was great hearing from you. We appreciate your 5 pillars of a 7-figure mindset.
Thanks so much. It was awesome being here.